issues where people, stories, experiences, conversations are brought together. Right? There are three ways in which we wanted to establish this platform of Beyond and into modern success in India. One is when we look beyond the surface. The second is when we dive beyond expectations. And the third is when we have the vision to see beyond success, right? So this journey with Arjun Rampal, where we are, discovering what lies beyond. In the first leg, we are obviously looking at an association announcement, and in the second leg, we are establishing a direct connect. This is where most of our content will come from. This is where Arjun Rampal, the House of Glenfiddich, all our ideas will be populated. So the first space is actually a proprietary luxury world that draws our pioneers in and encourages them to look beyond the surface, right? So while we already know that a strong driver of recognizing luxury is having very unique and instinctive taste, right? That taste understands craftsmanship, it appreciates what's exceptional, and it's constantly looking at refining and honing in on details that are usually unseen or go unseen by normal people, right? That is what drives taste to recognize and acknowledge luxury. So we want to build this thought across our consumer, that the consumer that has taste does understand, appreciate, and create conversations that tie back to luxury. So these consumers are, of course, I've already mentioned, they are able to recognize craftsmanship. And because they have taste, they are constantly evolving their value system to discover, art, crafts, people, experiences, that broaden their perspective, right? So this again becomes a deeper value system. They can see beyond the surface. They recognize true and good art, true and good experiences, right? So Arjun Rampal and his eye for detail already does have
Hello.
a certain curated persona and lifestyle, right? He's always looked beyond the surface. He's not, let's say, for example, he's not just an actor, but he's an actor who's played a multitude of roles and a variety of roles, right? He's not just a model. He's a model that is set apart from the rest. He's not just a restaurateur. He's a restaurateur that I could say has brought Goa back on the international map, right? So it is his eye for detail that makes him, understand this ethos of looking beyond the surface, right? And because he's constantly going beyond, he knows what to look for. The final is when we speak about the Glenfiddich legacy of craftsmanship, right? As we already know, Glenfiddich has constantly been a legacy in motion. It is shaped by craft, it is sustained evolution, right? Glenfiddich not only introduced malts, but introduced the entire category of malts. They've been the first to take malts internationally. So the House of Glenfiddich becomes the world where we explore this world of craftsmanship and we look beyond the surface, right? So it is built on a shared philosophy of craft, curiosity, and constant progress. It becomes the meaning where beyond is explored. And each interaction in the House of Glenfiddich uncovers a different expression of what lies beneath modern success. So in the first part, we can see Arjun Rampal, looking in at the House of Glenfiddich. He sees the threshold, he wants more, and he wants to delve deeper, right? In the second part, he enters the house and he understands each of the cohorts that are there in the House of Glenfiddich, right? And we invite members within the house of Glenfiddich to have conversations with Arjun Rampal. So in phase one, sorry, I'll just go back. Yes. So in phase one, we talk about Arjun's ethos, detail to craft, understanding, taste, and how that makes him a connoisseur of luxury. We show glimpses of a house and we signal a bigger world, right, without saying it out loud. In phase two, he immerses himself in each of the rooms. So while whiskey making might not be possible, we've already done an emotion with Aston Martin. We do more with Wimbledon, with couture, with art, culture. So this is where the entire conversation of beyond comes in, right? And the House of Glenfiddich becomes a long-term property. Within the House of Glenfiddich, we invite members to create and have conversations to discuss, what is it that makes them progressive pioneers? What is this, eye to evolution, to detail, to taste, and then of course what elevates that into luxury, correct? We can have, experiential activations across art, travel, which of course is already happening. And the House of Glenfiddich, becomes an expression of luxury, which it already is. The second space is beyond expectations. When we look at success, we look at success as linear, right? You do something, you keep doing it, you get better, you become the best, right? However, it's said that, of course, a jack of all trades is oftentimes better than a master of none, right? So keeping that in mind, our consumer is one that is constantly evolving beyond one identity. So when we look at our consumer, we want to realize that um, fulfillment comes from constantly discovering yourselves from through new paths, right? To take by taking the road less traveled, right? Constant evolution demands that you take different paths. So whether you look at Nikhil Kamath or you look at Anand Mahindra, right? They have taken different paths. Success is not external validation; it is extremely internal for them, right? It is the pursuit of something new that drives their parameters of success, right? When we are looking at Arjun Rampal, of course, he's always chosen extremely unexpected paths, right? He's not just a model, he's also a restaurateur. And of course, today people will agree that almost every model slash actor owns a restaurant, but during his time, he was one of the first, right? He's also a DJ, he's a devoted father, and there are multiple facets of his personal and professional life, that shows that he's constantly looking to reinvent himself. He's constantly trying new paths, new things, right? So when we are building this into the Glenfiddich ethos, Glenfiddich also believes in constant evolution, right? We've never treated success as something to preserve. Success is multifaceted and for something to constantly build upon. So while we are looking at, developing our malts, we also look at how can we better our packaging, and we're looking at, success not as a destination, but again as constant evolution. So the House of Glenfiddich becomes this space where we celebrate continuous evolution with Arjun Rampal, and it's built on Glenfiddich's belief that, of course, success is non-linear, and every experience hence explores a different expression of modern success, right? So in part one, we look at what Arjun Rampal went through beyond each win, right? So we track this philosophy of constant evolution, with questions like maybe what pulled him into this world, what did he want, what did each craft demand of him, his each journey that he's taken, right? And then what changed once he was inside it. The second is tapping into this trait of Arjun Rampal's to constantly explore what's new, and we can actually create a new journey where he discovers a new path, a new pursuit that becomes a part of his life in the House of Glenfiddich. The third space is where we look at success as the starting of an even greater vision or an even greater pursuit, right? So we can look at Steve Jobs, JRD Tata. For them, achieving something wasn't the end, right? It was always looking at what's next, right? Um, which is what brings us to our consumer. So success for them creates the freedom to go even further, right? Success is not permission to slow down. It drives them to think bigger, right? So what's after this? To create impact beyond just their personal achievements, right? And they're the ones who constantly keep choosing bigger and bigger. I wouldn't say challenges, but bigger and bigger goals, right? Their success drives them to constantly want to achieve bigger goals. Arjun Rampal also has never settled into, just being a good actor or just being a good model, right? Every rung of success that he has climbed has constantly driven him to ask, what's next, right? He's constantly looked beyond every successful chapter in his life. And rather than preserving one image, he constantly wants to look beyond and move beyond it, right? So Glenn Fiddick also is constantly building what's next, right? Whether it's building his own distillery or building the world's single malt category, Glenn Fiddick chooses to challenge convention and always envision and create what's coming next. Beyond success is the space where the House of Glenfiddich celebrates these people who choose what comes next beyond their own personal successes. So each remarkable journey is remembered. And then we embark on the what's next journey and becomes a space where people reveal what came next, right? So when we are looking at Arjun Rampal, he introduces the stories in the first half, where your iconic pioneers are reflected upon. And in the second phase, we create a human library in the house of Glenfiddich. So the philosophy becomes more and more personal for Arjun Rampal, where he also talks about his life and invites others to continue the conversation. So the campaign architecture across all three spaces would be that in the first round we merely announce and set the context that drives intrigue and excitement. We introduce both Arjun Rampal into the House of Glenfiddich, and we show him driving further curiosity. The second stage, which starts at 2027 and will continue, is where we define, demonstrate, and build. So, this is where our content pieces will mainly come from. We keep re-establishing the relationship, we deepen the philosophy, and then, of course, we create further excitement. So, we'll move on to the media plan now.
Yes.
Ayushi, would you
So,
like to take over?
before we get into the phasing, we'll spend some time on how media actually works on this Glenfiddich audience. So, GWI data splits every touch point into two ways. Some drive recall and some build preference. So, if you will see from the slide over here, we are not just only trying to build recall for Glenfiddich to be front of mind, but it also we add preference to that filter, and that is what actually moves someone from I have seen that to I want that. So the touch point list that you see here, that is a brand partnership, sports, celebrity, OTT, magazine, and so on. Everything will work towards building conviction for Glenfiddich, which is exactly where the funnel on the next slide does. Tanya, can you just move to the phasing slide? Yes. So this is the funnel phased wise for pre-buzz, which is on the left hand side, and to the launch, that is on the right hand side. Pre-buzz opens with awareness. We will have our YouTube ads, our DOH, then which will be across metro cities, airports, and airports, then which will lead us to curiosity and trust, which we are going to build through your editorials on Bombay Times, Delhi Times magazines, hotel magazines across luxury, lifestyle, auto, fashion, and wedding couture, and which will lead us to anticipation stage, where we are going to utilize lifestyle influences to create reels. And by the time we reveal anything, there is already a what is this partnership with Arjun Rampal conversation, which is already happening on social organically. And we will close it with our press amplification, that is through digital articles and A&M coverage. Then it will open to your mass reveal. That is, we are going to go ahead with your YouTube for non-skippable ads and 100% SOV block against all the F1 channels, CTV, first screen mastheads, and the big OH and DOH push that will push the whole campaign. In this phase, we are not only going to use DOH and OH for metro cities and airports, we will also be using it for lounges, for the video wall on airports. Then we are going to reach to the audience with high SOV platforms like Meta, OTT platforms, where we will have our premium placements in on inventory on Amazon Prime and Geo Hotstar. And with that, we will be also present across your premium news platforms, from ranging from Bloomberg, ET, Mint, Condé Nast, and of course reaching out to podcast audience as well. And then we are going to narrow it down into dissemination phase through influencers on LinkedIn and A&M pages, turning the reveal into a story that keeps circulating even after the launch day, and not just a moment that spikes in one quarter. That is how we have broadly covered the media touch points for this campaign. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ayushi, for taking us through the media touch points. But I'm going to step back a bit. And before we hear Kapila's point of view on this, I have a question for Tanya. And maybe if the other guys want to step in, then of course, question for the team. You've proposed three spaces. We'll have a discussion on these three spaces, but the idea of doing this is to understand two important things. First is that in quarter four, we will experience the biggest peak for the industry. I'm sure it's industry agnostic. Diwali brings in a lot of goodness for all organizations in all industries. So our starting point is that Q4 is an important period, which we don't want to miss, which is why we want to launch in Q4 and sustain that goodness in 2027, such that the production budgets that we will only get in 2027 get executed nicely into a master film and dissemination plus amplification. So our starting point is the peak period this year, which is quarter four. And you did have a media plan which spoke about touch points, but our starting point remains at Q4. The second important thing is that you're going to bring in the talent with Beyond. And I'm going to not go back to the spaces, but to ensure that we bring in Beyond talent, House of Glenfiddich in the most important period of the year. How are we going to create content that gets amplified this year in quarter four? You've spoken about the touch points, you've spoken about the spaces, but something that is not clear to me right now is what will I put on OH? If you're suggesting a YouTube bumper ad, what will I add on that bumper ad? Why are you suggesting certain mediums which are connected to the three spaces? So if you can just help me understand that, then we can probably speak about the spaces.
Um, I think what we have to do is first we have to lock in on what is it that we want to say, right, with Arjun Rampal, which means that we first have to lock in on a route, correct? And then after that, we kind of start populating ideas that, let's say, if we're going with the first idea, right? So in the first quarter, what we would want to show and would be that Arjun Rampal enters this space, which is the House of Glenfiddich, and within the House of Glenfiddich, right? there are these different cohorts which are already existing. Along with that, we could have Arjun Rampal talk about maybe, I don't know, curated Diwali evenings, right? Just off the top of my head, an idea, right? Or we could speak about curated gifting over Diwali, correct? And since we're looking at multiple channels, then each of the conversations will be skewed towards, each of the media will kind of amplify whatever we are saying as the Diwali message. So first, we have to lock in on what is it that we want Arjun Rampal to say about the House of Glenfiddich, in the House of Glenfiddich. And then, of course, our festive and, all our topical spikes will keep building into that.
See, I will just try to add to a few points over there. The way we have thought about this one, and for all the three routes, the approach had been that whatever we are building for Q4 now and 2027, both the things, while they are connected, and 27 will be an evolution of the thought, or the amplification of the thought that we start seeding in Q4 26. But the point is that all the elements what we create as a communication would be complete in itself. So we are not having an approach where we just create a teaser in 26 and then the full launch in 27, but rather than, you can say that whatever the idea is, 1.0 will happen in 26, followed by the idea 2.0 in 27. So that will only take that the initial build further. But even the idea and whatever launch that we do in 26 would be a complete piece building the brand Glenfiddich in a way which is not dependent on the final reveal to say or the amplification to say in 26. And depending on our key priorities, whether it's about driving the end touch points or driving the retail sales, etc., all the ideas will be built, like Tanya was saying, under the platform that we choose.
So, if I have to ask you, what is going to be the difference in the mediums that will carry this message that you're trying to give away in phase one and phase two?
Would you like to take it on in terms of the media touch points?
Media touch points, yeah, media touch points. I think
yeah. One second. We were just looking at the slide. So basically, we have. If we just go back to the presentation, Tanya, we can quickly explain how we're looking at phase one. Phase one is a little.
Sorry. I've been very patient. I need to jump in because I also need to catch my flight. I'm very disturbed looking at this. That's very disturbed. When you were presenting your first route, I was completely lost. I don't even know what are you talking about, Tanya, over there. A physical house of Glenfiddich. I mean, are we for real? You say you know the consumer well, yet the first thing that you've written on that slide is whiskey appreciations. And then you go and say that, oh, ये तो हो नहीं सकता है शायद, तो हम दूसरा कर लेंगे. Then you've spoken about things like IGPL, you've spoken about Wedding Collective. All of that is happening in August. I mean, you have understood, you guys are working on our consumer understanding further, right? You do know, along with Harshali, how we are using communication as a route to reach out to the consumer by and large, whom we can't get to by direct interactions, right? People who will not be invited for our events, people whom we will not touch with our collaborations, people who we probably the only effective way to reach out to them is via combos. Yet, Delhi, in your media plan, you're talking again metros. Where is the connection in your thinking also? I'm completely lost. मतलब हम वही same चीज बोले जा रहे हैं, वही YouTube mastheads, वही, but, and I'm saying that's again a second thing. How do you plan bringing it to life? From the day that I briefed you guys, the moment I said let's announce the partnership, obviously with some storytelling, and then we see how that story progresses, next year. वो वही की वही चीज रूट 2 में डाल दी गई है, very predictable. In the meeting, you guys had some brain waves wherein you said that, okay, let's probably, look at different routes. I said, I'm happy to. A non-creative, non-strategic, non-marketeer in me gives me the obvious. कि इस साल पार्टनरशिप अनाउंस कर दो, अगले साल स्टोरी बताएंगे. But how? Is it anything that he is doing next that no one knows about? We will only get to know. That's what your second route is, right? That he's not stopping at whatever. What's next for him? Let's say there is nothing next for him. What do? So how can you be dependent on a route जिसकी कोई certainty नहीं है? Let's say वो यही कि मैंने डीजेइंग करनी है, मेरे पास और एक्टिंग के ऑफर्स आ रहे हैं, मैं तो वही करूंगा. The third route, if I use my imagination, is where I see some meat. But that is so production heavy. That is also dependent on us bringing more people who like Dipinder, like X, like Y, like Z, who are also progressive pioneers in their own right. And Arjun does the storytelling along with them, so it becomes like a podcast of sorts. But that means so much more celebrity cost. That means so much more. So the limitations on budgets will apply there so much more. A road, probably a route that I love the most. And that is something that I'd also done in Where Next, right? We brought in these success stories, we put them in one place, we ran promos. Great thing to do. Who's going to pay for so many celebs? Yeah, unless it is taken a very different route of partnerships that we are bringing your story to life. Here is Arjun, and they come on board as, their story being brought to life. But कितने ऐसे होंगे हैं? So aren't we making things more and more difficult for us? Nothing is talking to the other thing. We've spoken about, through and through, we are talking about Glenfiddich, about legacy, we are talking about XYZ. Here, guys, we will not be connecting legacy at all. Arjun की क्या legacy है मुझे बताओ? There's no legacy. It is nothing that he is falling back on in his success. It's progressive motion. So why discussion of legacy when we can't even bring Glenfiddich in any conversation over there? Our presence will end up being as logo slates. We know it. So I don't know. You guys have presented consumer to us some month, 2 months, 3 months back. I think 2 odd months back. आप लोग खुद ही भूल चुके हैं उस चीज को. आप अभी हर्षिदी के साथ अपना टाइम लगा रहे हो, looking at your cohort, your crusader consumer, your inspirer, your aspire, and the role of media. Again, you've forgotten. You are again coming to your inner circle with media dailies. So why are you people forgetting your own work? I give you examples of IGPL and Wedding Collective as spaces wherein we will use these events, the physical events, but create some media assets, get larger reach. It ends there. I don't know, what do you mean when you say हम उसको एक room create कर देंगे? So guys, please get a fix on this. This is very disturbing. Chetan, I'm going back to yours and my conversation in the corridor.
So if I have to capture the discussion, Kapila, I think while I'm keeping media aside right now for the sake of, because media, Delise was presenting from an overview perspective, while the emerging markets.
She knows the strategy. She's the one who's working with Harshali on the strategy.
Yes, so I was just wanting to add on that piece, Kapila. We are still WIP on that tier 1, tier 2 wala discussion. We thought in this meeting we'll just present an overview. However, that is also what we are working on.
Can't be no Delise. You are saying कि I know that we are moving ahead in our geographical approach. I know that work is still on, but I definitely know that you guys want it, and that's the role you want your media to play. Still, I'm bringing this in. So to cut the long story short, guys, please, let's be realistic. Actually, I think you and I will connect sometime Monday early morning, create our own plan, because this doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But guys, please, Ankit, you've just come into this whole scheme of things. Please shake up some stuff. And there's no need to shake up. It's a new team. It's not that, they've been working with us forever and वो stainless आ गए ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं. But something need to be put in perspective. And this was a plan. This was not a creative presentation. I am completely cognizant of that. I'm not asking for a creative solution. All I'm saying is, how do you bring this to life in quarter 4? Maybe sometime of quarter, Jan, Feb 2, till the time your new assets get made. How do you keep that buzz alive? How do you keep it? Can't be just an announcement, right? कितनी बार announce करेंगे हम? हमने let's say October में announce कर दिया. Arjun Rampa partners with a brand. There is some creative treatment to it. Brilliant. But it कहाँ sustain होगा वो? Where is the merit in that? You are the ones who have to tell me that. Kapila, this is a loser idea.
If I may come in, Kapila, so I think that...
But I'm again saying, the route 3 has merit. Route 3 has got some teeth. It has that continuity to it. Maybe it will be of merit to speak to some, PR folks as well and see if we can get more people without that costing us a bomb. But that's one route which is subject to, getting a major approval and is very dependent on budgets. But the route, what is the other route that is there in front of us? So let's spend some time. The treatment, कैसे वो develop होगा? हम इस quarter क्या कर रहे हैं? अगले quarter क्या कर रहे हैं? What is the tentative route that we're taking? The first 2 don't work. The third one only works, but the third one is very expensive. But I personally like it. Harshali, you have something to say? I've got just 6 minutes.
No, I was just saying that the third route definitely looks better than the other two, but a very big question that we'll have to ask is, do we need Arjun? Are we going to minimize his let's say he's onboarded, why do we need Arjun to actually host these conversations if he's going to speak about other leaders? It's only going to dilute his presence.
No, you use him for quarter 4 is my understanding. You use his storytelling for quarter 4. It doesn't end there. He says that, there are many such, that's what I could gather. When Tanya was presenting that there are many such stories so now think of it. When you approach Dipinder Goyal, for example, a horrible orator, and not even, that finessed as a Glenfiddich crusader should be. But let's say it's him, just for argument's sake. When you approach him directly and say, I want to create a progressive story on you, he'll say, yeah, give me 10 crores. Throwing the number, just like that. But when you say that it is a story that, a celeb is involved, there's a podcast of sorts, all of that, it changes your narrative significantly. That's my understanding, but they need to flesh it out a bit. And that I'm saying is still very, very ambitious. We can discuss route 3, route 2, whatever, but Abhi, as of now, what I'm trying to say is you guys need to work harder on this. Yes, but secure. Happy to have a call tomorrow morning if you guys need, or Monday morning if you guys need, but to get you guys, more clarity, we want to do some brainstorming on it. Can do, but कुछ thought starters होने चाहिए हमारे पास.
So we'll have to cut a couple of more routes in terms of how do we approach this in terms of the arc. That's what the idea. I think she's there. She's left.
More than the routes, she's dropped off. Of course, you have to cull out more routes, but you also have to figure out how are you carrying those routes to market, because ultimately you launch a teaser, you launch a film in October when Diwali period kicks off. How do I take it to the media channels that Delise and Ayushi spoke about? What do I do on OH? What do I do on social?
Are you asking for a media plan?
No, I'm not. What I'm asking for, and what Kapila was also trying to ask for, is a strategy to actually execute these phases.
Media strategy. Media strategy.
Not just media, Chetan. From a point of view of House of Glenfiddich, if we are introducing Arjun, how do we take that story for 3 months?
I'm making things simpler for myself to comprehend, and I'm breaking the two things separate for my own clarity. And please hear me out when I say this. There is one part of the presentation which is presenting the space, a cut on the idea of beyond. We presented three spaces. Out of those three spaces, we pick one. And how do we take the story in 2026? And how do we take the head in 2027? That's from a brand standpoint. When you're asking me, how do we make it live? What will be the YouTube channel? What will be my social media creatives? That is, again, two parts. One is what will be my creative look like? That will be a creative presentation. And where these creatives will be go live, that's a media strategy. I think for us, it is imperative to close on the space first. I was not actually interested in doing the media also this round, but we were discussing internally since we were doing it. Let's get the media team also in because I was expecting that it will get into the media execution debate. So, for the sake of a concentrated discussion, the next time when we meet, I think we should close it on the space and how are we looking at that space, the route in 2026 and that involves in 2027. If we are aligned on that, rest is all creative execution and media strat that we can bring that alive. Otherwise, we'll keep shooting in the dark. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ankit.
Yeah, actually, see, there are three parts to it, like you said. That one is what's our communication space, and maybe a little bit of hint of that what would be our communication strategy in terms of what we will communicate now in 26 and how will it be communicated, or the same narrative or narrative 2.0 will get into 27. And that's what on after each of the route we try to say. For example, that in the first route, and I understand that there is something that I might not be aware of, that is a house of Glenfiddich the physical property won't be available, so just leave that practical realities aside. But there we were saying that okay, we will get Arjun Rampal into House of Glenfiddich, the physical space, and he will talk about craftsmanship in the first narrative, which will be carried forward in the next one when he will be interacting with the craftsmen who had created it, and some of the people who are outside this domain who are known for their craft. Similarly, for the third route, like we were saying, which was beyond the success, that at this point in time in tier one, in 26 he will start the narrative with his own journey, etc., and carry on into 27 with rest of the pioneers who he will interact, and we will populate these stories. So this is the level of development that we can do on the com strat level. Then the second level is where we get into ideation, that okay, creatively what all can be done in 26, what would be the launch ideas, then the sustenance, amplification, etc., and same how will be carried into 27. And once we have that creative idea trajectory very clear, then we rope in the media team, or the teams can work in tandem, that if this is the idea, what is the best possible medium and what are the assets to be created, then the media team gives the detailed plan for this thing. So this is a three-part problem. Definitely, yes, the first part, which is the communication strategy. Some feedback I have noted down from sorry. Yeah, some feedback I have noted down on that. What are the things that we have to fix? For example, while we are not building anything on legacy, so the language has to be crafted better, etc. So that feedback has been noted, and how do we sharpen these spaces and communication plan? But currently, we have not even addressed the phase 2 and phase 3, which is the creative ideation. What ideas will help us to bring alive those spaces, and then followed up by media. So is the expectation to build all three at least at the skeleton level so that we have a richer conversation? Or we say that, okay, the com strategy is fine in terms of the third space, definitely we'll be sharpening it out. Now build creative and media plan on the back of it.
First of all, thank you for bringing out those three steps. That's exactly what I was talking about, Ankit. Happy that you got that at least. Now, let me take you again back to our conversation when we met in office. I don't know if this has been communicated in as clear words, but the reason why we are building this plan is very simple and straightforward. We've been tasked with an introduction of talent. We've been tasked with a creation of a dark market asset with very limited budget availability this year. The
Hello?
only point where we will probably
Hello?
get access to that production budget is going to be in 2027. So the
हाँ हाँ भैया
starting point of
भैया
this
आ
entire
रही हूँ 2 मिनट
conversation is that 2026 quarter 4 is to be saved because it is an important period, because we can introduce our talent and get the goodness that the brand needs within those dark market regulatory compliances that we have. So this was the starting point of this conversation. We have to build something in 2026 that involves minimum budgets such that we don't miss out on the reach that we could capitalize on in the festive period. And then in 2027, shoot in Jan the master film that all of us are geared up against or for, and then amplify that talent news. So this is the bigger context. Now to address this, this team that is on this call was tasked with a strategy that, guys, if you have to break it down in 2 parts, introduce the talent in quarter 4, create a big campaign in quarter 1 next year, what is the strategy? Because the only simple thing that you can think of is launch a teaser video, boost it for 3 months, and then come back next year. But we can't do that because one video is not going to make any difference unless you have a plan in place. Your communication strategy actually reaches the markets that you want to reach, the people that you want to reach, the mediums that you want to reach. So you have to do 1 and 2 in the strategy that you spoke about. I am not talking about what creatives go on social, what creatives go on OH, but you have to find a way to reach all of these mediums and create that digital plus off ground reach.
I'm still not clear. I mean, if maybe for my my lack of clarity, as far as I think we need to lock on the space first, and then get into the other things because otherwise it will again become convoluted. But I mean, I'm happy to hear other people what do they think, but for the lack of because in the interest of a very focused approach, what do we need to do from a strat standpoint? What do we need to what does the brand stand for as far as beyond is concerned in 2026 and 27? If we lock that, then rest of the things becomes pretty clear. Right now we don't even know what is the meaning of beyond. What are we trying to communicate? And that needs to lock in the space in the strategy, whether it is beyond success, beyond expectation, or beyond surface, whatever that is. But that needs to get locked. And then we move ahead with other spectrums, because otherwise we'll be doing a lot many things, scrambling ourselves, and not land onto the core of what does that brand stand for in 26 and 27. So therefore, my submission will be to lock that core first. Because
I agree.
today also, I think the media bit was not required. I'll be honest, it wasn't required, but still we got it up, and therefore I think the things got a little delayed. If we have a very focused approach on what is meaning of beyond for India market, and therefore how does Arjun Rampal personify that meaning of beyond in India market? That is the space we need to lock on. That is the first step. If we all agree on that particular space. Because, and then we move ahead into, okay, the journey and the media plan and the creative space. I think that's, in my opinion, should be the way to go about it. If we have to close it really fast, because we are racing against time. We are entering August, and if we have to go live in October, we hardly have any time. We have to shoot also.
I agree, Chetan. And Harshili, while I understand we absolutely should capitalize on the Q for whatever we're saying, but the main conversation today was to understand what we want Arjun Rampal to say, right? And then we talk about how he says it and where he says it, right? Those are two later parts of the conversation. So I think once we lock in on again what he's talking about, that will make the rest of the journey much easier, because ideas and then media would flow from there.
We'll leave it with you guys. I've shared my point of view. If there's disagreement, then of course we'll leave it with you. Anyway, we were supposed to share this H2 plan with the global teams by today. So Kapila and I will work on this Monday morning and park it with them basis our understanding, but happy to discuss whenever you're ready.
Just one quick question, if I may ask. I don't know whether that was discussed with the internal teams earlier, etc. That when we say that this year we have lesser budgets, much less budgets, and the crux of the budget would be available last year, do we have certain estimates or numbers available with us that what is the kind of budgets which is for our usage for production plus media for this year versus the next year?
You will only be able to fulfill your still plus social video production with the budgets that we have. So the
Okay,
idea
so-
is to get a smaller, low scale production video out with some stills so that again the need of mediums doesn't get compromised because the media team here understands how important OH and print become in that festive period.
Understood. So if we, because initially I was thinking, like I said, that I was thinking it in my mind that 1.2 and 2.2, then definitely it's more like a teaser and the reveal, or the teaser or the bigger trailer to say. rather
Exactly.
than
So because you
1.0.
said 1.0, 2.0, in fact, I wanted to set that context for you because my assumption was that you're thinking of two big launches, two series. While yes, that's a good way to go ahead, but I still wanted to leave this thought of budget with you because again, the team was made privy to this fact in the room, but I wasn't sure if it reached you.
No, understood. No, I got confused. Team was telling me that somewhere you guys have suggested trailer, teaser, and reveal. So my point was that because it's a high festive season at that point in time, so asset should be good enough and big enough to work on its own. Now also the way we'll work is that even if we do still and maybe a small teaser kind of thing for talent announcement, that should be, while it should do the hard work for us, but definitely it can't be 1.0 and 2.0. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. It needs to serve the purpose, but unfortunately, it will be confined with limited budgets.
Understood. Thanks for that clarity.
All right, then you guys let me know today or on Monday when you guys want to meet next and we can catch up.
Sure. Thanks, Harshili. Thanks, Atul.
Thanks, Harshili. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.